YouTube! What is going on, y'all? It is your boy Young Texas and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a fantastic day today. I have made numerous videos here on the channel in regards to Microsoft's pursuit to acquire Activision Blizzard, the publishing studio behind tons of games including Call of Duty, and in today's video, I have a little update about that. So we had already heard about a verbal contract between both Microsoft and Nintendo that would see Call of Duty come back to Nintendo consoles once Microsoft did acquire Activision Blizzard and thus Call of Duty. But now we have confirmation that a written and legally binding contract has been signed by both sides. However, of course, Microsoft does not currently own Call of Duty as the Activision Blizzard acquisition has yet to go through. So should that acquisition fall through, the contract between Microsoft and Nintendo would become null and void. However, that contract has at least been signed at this time. Additionally, Microsoft announced a deal with NVIDIA that would see Call of Duty and other games come to GeForce Now and thus be available on PC, macOS, smartphones, and so much more. Now, the contract between Microsoft and Nintendo, although it was released overnight over in North America, this release time was intentional because it was done so to get ahead of a meeting this morning over in Europe that included talks of the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. That being said, earlier today over in Europe, leaders from Xbox, PlayStation, Activision, Google, NVIDIA, and more gaming companies met over in Brussels to discuss the Activision Blizzard acquisition by Microsoft. There was some compromise suggested that perhaps when Microsoft acquired Activision Blizzard, they would carve out Call of Duty or some other division that was owned and operated by Activision Blizzard. However, Microsoft made it very clear that they want all or nothing. Microsoft made a presentation detailing why their acquisition of Activision Blizzard would be positive for the gaming community and foster competition with Sony. Now, because this meeting was being held over in Europe, Microsoft cited the European statistic that showed that Sony actually held 80% of the market shares compared to Microsoft and Xbox's 20%, which would also be a reason why Microsoft would want to acquire Activision Blizzard so that they could better match and compete with this overwhelming monopoly held by Sony and PlayStation. Now, both Nintendo and NVIDIA were supportive of Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard, and yes, this is in no doubt relation to and caused by the deal that Microsoft struck with these two companies. However, these two gaming powerhouse companies, again being Nintendo and NVIDIA, are in support of the acquisition. However, from the onset of acquisition talks, the biggest opposer to this acquisition was, of course, Sony. Sony's biggest reason for opposing the acquisition of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft was because they didn't want to see Call of Duty, which is a flagship game for PlayStation, especially given the contract they currently have with Activision Blizzard. They didn't want to see PlayStation no longer have Call of Duty on it. They wanted PlayStation players to still be able to play COD on their consoles. Now, interestingly enough, similar to the contract that Microsoft has with Nintendo guaranteeing Call of Duty on Nintendo consoles for the next 10 years, a similar contract was drawn up by Microsoft and offered to Sony that would guarantee that for at least the next 10 years, Call of Duty would be available on PlayStation consoles. In addition to that, there is no indicator or possible reason why Microsoft would not extend this contract after the 10-year period, guaranteeing further Call of Duty titles being put on PlayStation consoles. So not really sure why Sony isn't signing that contract right now, but I digress. So yeah, that being said, it's incredibly questionable as to why Sony doesn't want to support the acquisition or at least tolerate it. And honestly, the only thing that even comes to mind is that Sony doesn't want to deal with the increase of competition that will ensue when Activision is acquired by Microsoft. However, there is no real confirmation as to why Sony isn't supporting or, like I said, at least tolerating the acquisition, so I'm going to leave it at speculation at this point. All that being said, I'm sure that we will be receiving further updates about this impending acquisition in the very near future, and I'll be sure to cover those here on the channel. But yeah, guys, that is effectively going to wrap up today's video. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to drop a like and comment on it down below. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to turn on those notifications so you never miss any of my daily uploads. For even more from me, be sure to check out the links in the description below to connect with me on all of my social media so you never miss any of my content. Also, for the latest and greatest Call of Duty news, intel, and so much more, be sure to use the links in the description below to connect with IPC on all of our social medias as well as our website. But other than that, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and that's been it. Peace.